Well, welcome, Amber, to the Happy Mind Project, sharing your time with Carly and myself and countless other people on our couches from our virtual realities that has been thrust upon us. And for those of you that don't know Amber, she's an amazing human being. I've had the pleasure of spending some time with her. And to put it bluntly, she was calling me on all of my shit, which is awesome. I love, there's no hiding, and which is what we want. We don't want to be hiding from ourselves. And when we have these beings of light and love that can come and share their journey and share with us and potentially see where we might be holding the umbrella above ourselves, they might go, hey, you don't need to do that. It's okay. Come out. It's shining. It's sun outside. So with that preamble, welcome and thank you. And before we get started on any of our questions, can we just get you to share who, what, why, where you've evolved from, and some of your journey as to who you are here today?
Okay. Firstly, thank you. What a bloody beautiful introduction that was. I really appreciate that. And Carly, thank you also for having me. Like Rich is a teacher of mine, so I'm honored, and it's really great to meet you guys. I mean, how far back do you want me to go, Rich?
I think share, obviously we're all going through some challenging, not all, but a lot of us are going through some challenging periods right now. And, the concept of the happy mind is that life's always going to throw us challenges and curveballs. And from our conversations with yourself, you've had quite a few that have been thrown at you. And from them, you look like you've not only managed to deal with them, you've hit a few home runs in the process as well. So I think whatever you feel is relevant with your story.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me that space. And so I might actually take that in a sense of, I tend to, because people ask me that question all the time, and I'll feel into whether or not I blurt through my qualifications. But honestly, I think for anyone listening, what's really important to share is a bit of my background of why Rich probably brought me on, and this is just sensing from our conversations, is I was birthed into what might look like trauma. My mum was an addict when I was in the womb. And if we think about that on a cellular level, what that's doing to our development of our mind and the development of the world around us and how we experience life the very first time I came out, the world didn't feel safe to me, even when I was meant to be in the most safe place in the whole world. And my life kind of began like this. And I think, thank you for even, saying that you seem to have hit some home runs. And I guess I want to speak to that. And there's so much in between, like what happened from then until now. And the thing that has pulled me through, and I kind of say like pulled me through because sometimes I felt like I was being dragged, was curiosity. This curiosity and this allowance. And I was looking for the opposite word of like shame. And I think truly it's probably unconditional love. And that actually came from my dad. So my background in my development and my evolution was like I was born into this world that where nothing felt safe, and I didn't feel like anyone was there to protect me. And I remember as a little kid, like I remember at 3 years old, even 2 years old, getting out of my cot, and these really young memories, because I'd ask my dad and he's like, you were 2 then? I remember that memory. And I would be making my breakfast in the middle of the night. It's a very odd thing that I would get all the wheat bix and the milk and the sugar, and I would just had this idea to take care of myself. And I found this need to kind of take care of myself and fend myself, which worked at the time as a survival mechanism, but then became drastically destructive as an adult, which is kind of what we do, and I think probably gets in the road of us having a happy mind, really. So I grew up in that environment. My mum left when I was 3, and my stepmom came in very shortly afterwards. By the time I was 4, she was in my world, and she was dealing with her own hell and a very unhappy mind, and that was often taken out on me on verbal and emotional, what we might consider abuse. I didn't have a relationship with anyone that felt like a mother. My relationship with my dad was that of almost a friendship. I remember him telling me at about 3.5-ish, and this is, again, it's like I recall the conversation, Dad's like, you were 3, how do you remember that? Of him saying, all right, like your mom's left, you know, your nanny's the babysitter. I can't afford to keep buying you nappies. And I don't really like the washing. So you need to stop wetting the bed at night. You need to just get up and go to the toilet. And I remember being like, okay. And I did, you know, and so I've always had this like communication relationship with my dad that was like this, not like, this is how you should live life, this is what you should do. He's like, you're a free being. I love you, I adore you, and be free. And I think that came as a result of probably him not being able to handle. He was heartbroken when my mum left. And so I had this combination of not feeling safe, but absolute freedom in the world. Like not feeling safe, absolute freedom. Not feeling safe, absolute freedom. And combined with, you can do absolutely anything you want. I had this innate curiosity to be able to want to experience life. And I remember telling my dad, I was on the back of the bicycle at like 4 or 5 years old. And I'm like, I announced, I was like, I'm going to be a vet. So why do you want to be a vet? I was like, I love puppies. He's like, you know, puppies grow up. I'm like, oh. He's like, you know, you have to go to university for 11 years. And I was like, university, what's that? He's like, that's school after school. I was like, I don't do that. That's too long. So like, let's just get a puppy. He's like, puppies grow up. And I'm like, well, let's just keep getting them. He's like, it's not how it works anymore. So I just always had this, you know, I found things that brought me joy and then I would want to expand into them. And so basically what I'm saying is I would have these dreams and he would say, well, you can do that and just know here's what's involved. And so, okay, all right. So freedom, not feeling safe, but giving myself permission to do whatever I dreamed, and had my father like reinforce that that was okay. So I did miss that aspect of feeling safe because my stepmom was pretty abusive, and that was a whole nother mix that I had to kind of transcend later with my dad. You know, resented him because I moved out of home and blah, blah, blah. But we healed that relationship and he's back to be my best mate again. So I didn't have that sense of safety, which was a defensive mechanism that I then built that really trapped me and trapped all of my most tender heart inside, that I then had to push through life with. And then that's why I went to study so many different probably qualifications. I went to university, I studied radiation therapy. I lost a lot of people in my younger years. My stepfather committed suicide. My grandfather committed suicide. My aunt committed suicide. One of my best friends committed suicide. And so there was a lot of death. And then there was a lot of cancer death as well. So I was just interested in the mind and the body. Went to radiation therapy, studied that, got in, just felt a deep, intense, what you even call it, emptiness, and not in a beautiful spaciousness, and a deadness in the system. I didn't want to be a part of it. I felt like we're just treating a symptom that wasn't addressing it in the same sense. I'm so grateful for that system that exists. I just knew it wasn't for me to work and live in. So I left and studied psychosomatics and regression therapy and NLP and CBT and somatic healing and energy work and meditation and mindfulness. And then I've just molded that whole lifetime in together. And then now here I am. Awesome. So that's a nutshell.
That's an awesome nutshell. I also like when you're talking about how your dad would let you have the freedom to think and believe in all of that, but he also gave you the stuff required, so you didn't have the fantasy of it that, oh yeah, I'm just going to go and do that. But then you realize, no, there's stuff, I forget it. But he goes, okay, if you want to do that, here's some stuff that you have to do. Here's some steps you have to take. I think that's really cool. So how does that translate now into what you're doing? Like what are you all about? That's a big question, isn't it?
It is, and I thought about it a lot, especially lately, and in this world I've had to really, I've asked it to so many people for them to self-reflect, that I've taken the time to feel into that, and the answer's always different. And I guess really what I'm about is what I was talking about, which is funny, and I'm like even feeling like I want to cry in a happy way, of this understanding that we are already such free beings. And we create our own sense of suffocation and entrapment. And when we can understand that, and the simplicity of being able to come back to our own freedom, and live from that place while simultaneously accepting the mess of a human and the mind that can be if we get caught up in that, then we're good. I just want people to understand you're free and you can create that. And because I know from that space, the consciousness will raise, because people will be contributing from such a deep place of their innermost being. And so whatever they do, say, feel, and their vibration from there and create will be for the greater good. It will be to increase consciousness. And I'm like, if I can just get you back to there, back to the seat of yourself, you're free. Then you go from there. I'm not going to tell you what to do from there, but just get you back there over and over again, and then you do you.
So
and there's just so many different ways to get there, you know.
It's interesting, Amber, at this time a lot of mentors and teachers that are coming from a spiritual expression really are talking about use this time wisely. Now that we're at home and we've got all this time, dive deep, dig into your stuff. You know, there's so much work to be done. But I know often that's really hard for people, especially breaking trauma cycles and working through the patterns of all that past conditioning. And often doing that inner work is not fun, right? So what advice do you have for people while they're trying to, you know, maybe take a good hard look at themselves at this time, whether it's that they need to acknowledge they need to, or don't acknowledge but feel some inner, like deep inner unhappiness. How do they go gently through this at this time?
You used the two most perfect contrasting words. One was hard, one was gentle.
Yeah.
So for context for those listening, I worked in trauma for this is where I began with my work. When I moved into human behavior, I did a lot of just working with people with addiction and trauma and really understanding that, and our shadow aspects and our places where we had fractured our emotions or fractured our soul or fractured our cognition to our emotions and disassociated with them, that then creates those perpetual patterns of the unconscious mind that is sabotaging. So that's kind of what I feel you're talking about. Is that correct? And now we're kind of put in a place to sit with those and go, oh, I can't run anymore. Shit. Yeah. Sorry, I swore.
That's all right. We've seen your Instagram page.
Good.
We were prepared.
You're prepared. So I was someone who was like, yep, this is hard, do the work, dig in deep, and actually now more than ever, the more I'm hearing that, the more I cringe. I'm like, you know what, let's actually shift that. And as I was kind of saying earlier, I truly believe there's probably three things that are just right now, I'm like, okay, these three things are probably my current potent advice, and it's just mine, take it or leave it. One, curiosity, not the desire to change, like shift, like be curious instead of aggressively doing the work.
Yeah.
That'll shift it from feeling hard to just gently looking. Like it takes the fear away instantaneously, like curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Humor.
Yeah.
If we don't have humor in this time, we're screwed. Period. Ever. General. It's like we have to have humor. We have to have humor and think humanity. Have humor, have a sense of humor. Don't take this all so seriously. You take it seriously, you look at through that old paradigm of that lens of, right, I have to be rigid and I have to meditate like this, or I have to do this work like this, and these are the structures and the tools and the rigidity. You will feel rigid, you will feel contracted, you will feel judged, you will have a sense of doing it wrong, you will feel obliged, you will feel shame and fear that you must use this wisely, which is, there's a presupposition that you could possibly waste any moment at all, right? So that's this, you know, impending doom of must utilize and be productive spiritually, which is just ego anyway. So it's like, relax that, drop back into the humor, which will then give you the spaciousness to look at what you're doing with a lens of just curiosity and openness. And then when you're with it, prioritize practices in your day that bring you joy. continuously choose joy, because it is our innate essence that is an organic result of our presence. And with our presence, and if you have curiosity and you have humor and you have joy, you can move through any of what's arising within you with much more ease and grace and gentle kindness. And it will be the leverage that you have from a place of joy and a place of humor and curiosity is far more powerful than going at this of making sure that you achieve and you get through your stuff and you make sure you overcome. It's just like, it's such an old school fear wounded masculine paradigm.
It almost comes back to that whole capitalistic paradigm that we've all been living under too, isn't it? Achieve more, move forward, be bigger, better, greater, which is interesting, isn't it? From even, we look back through probably, you know, the 90s and the early 2000s and all those sort of coaching things, like, I don't know, it's like, how can I be the best and biggest and grandiose version of ourselves? And it all comes back to ego, right? And it's like me cultivating and manufacturing these things. So I think if I'm taking from what you're saying, we just surrender and realize that there ain't no shit. It's just human and humanity. And in that, find the humor, because it is really funny, the stuff we can create. Sure, we all have to go through some pretty hard stuff. And like yourself, you've been through those incredibly traumatic things. And not that we laugh at those situations, but eventually in ourselves, we have to realize that I can either stay feeling sorry for myself and repeating these patterns in my own mind of how bad and what the reasons why I am this way, or I can just let them go and realize I'm just a human and being 100%. And come back to that.
The humor shatters the shame, and the shame is what keeps us in the perpetual patterns. So I'm not saying you need to laugh at these things or not take it seriously or avoid them or bypass them. Just bring that attitude and that energy, and you will naturally be able to shift through these things that have arisen for you to move through. So yes, use this time, but don't come at it as I must use this time. It's like, okay, what can I be curious about? How can I be joyful with that? And then that will enable me to move through what's arising. And it's almost like you're inviting yourself with a different, you're armored because you're not armored in a sense. Like you've got the best ammunition without armor.
Beautiful.
So have you got any advice for someone that, I guess on a practical level, that, okay, I'm feeling, you know, from my patterns that I live by, the definition of myself is that I generally feel quite low and sad based on all this. How do I move from that state into joy, to see the humor? My lenses have been filtered with looking for darkness. How do I shift that?
Yeah. So there's a few things that I want to say to that. One is that I have so much compassion for you if that's your experience of the world, and I have felt that many times in my life, and I understand that place, and it feels really, really tough. And so the very first thing is like, I just send you so much love and compassion, and please give that to yourself firstly. So compassion, begin there, as in like, it's okay that you're feeling this way. Secondly, know that there's no fault in you for it. Like, you're not broken. It's not like someone else has some secret that you don't, and we all have this sudden like joy formula that you don't have, right? I truly believe in this lifetime, I was given the gift of curiosity, and I have helped it. I have chosen to cultivate that, which I'm going to give you the practical tool, right? I've chosen to cultivate that, to open myself and expand in order to let go of what keeps me feeling heavy, including my ideas about myself, who I am, and how things have been, which has been a very tough thing to let go of at times, because it's been what I've identified as, oh, I am just this person. This is the way I am. This is the way it is. It must be like this for me. So compassion, and just knowing that if your lens has been that way, it's just a lens. We get to shift that lens, and it's not as hard as we believe. I have myself done this, like struggled and made it really hard for me to change that lens, or change the way I see the world, or, you know, shift things and drop them like a hot potato instead of dropping them like a hot potato. And I've made it harder to change because no one ever told me it was this easy. And it's almost an insult to the ego to say, actually, we can shift that now. We can, and we can do that. And I don't want to say we must, but we must shift that now in order to really raise. So I want you to first give yourself permission and go, could it be possible that it's actually quite easy for me to move out of this heaviness and into joy in an easy way? And could it be possible that I can choose that again and again and again until it becomes my norm instead of my old home being this? And is it possible that just because it's been my home to feel lonely and dark and deep, that's just because that was the only room I knew to exist in and no one told me how to turn on the light and open the door? And now perhaps someone is just giving me that and giving me this in the metaphor and giving me a gift. And perhaps I can take this and try it on and see if it fits. And if it feels right for me, then I'm going to give myself permission to actually let go of that very heavy, wounded archetype and paradigm that we all have within us that we're all learning to drop away. That's the first thing I want to invite. The second thing is the tool. Can I teach it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm talking a lot here. Do you want to interrupt me and ask questions or something?
Or can I say that in the correct way? Shit, yeah.
Okay. So, Carly, is there anything you wanted to say to any of that? I'm yabbering away here, and I'm
loving it. I'm deep. I'm like totally there with you.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to get a pen and paper. Lucky I always have one close by. I'm mindful that this is going to be backwards. You're going to have to deal with it because it's a circle and it can't be backwards. Okay, so this is a circle. It's a pretty good circle.
Yeah, it's a very good circle.
Right. And I'm going to draw 5 dashes on this circle. Now, I didn't make up this concept, but I just made up this way of teaching it. Like, this concept is as old as the hills. But with Calm Mind Co, we teach in schools, and then we teach to big corporate organizations. We teach to the Defense Force and the vets and the mine. So I wanted to give something for the mind to go, oh, I can see that. Cool, let's use it. So this is what this is. And I call it, well, if I'm speaking to the kids, I call it the magical thinking circle. If I'm talking to anyone over the age of 6, I call it the empowerment circle. So essentially it's got 5 aspects to it. And the very first one at the top, I write the word see. And that is how I see the world. And then you can think of an idea. Perhaps if you're feeling that sense of loneliness, I want you to inquire and just hear the dialogue behind it, lonely, and see if you can find the dialogue that you've given some energy to. So perhaps I'm lonely. Well, and even if it seems really obvious, just be open to the curiosity of what if I was to just challenge that or flip that, I don't know, and just notice, okay, so what, or maybe it's I'm afraid. What's the because? I'm lonely. What's the because? Why? What is it? What is it that why do you feel like you're that way? Or I'm scared. Okay, why? And even if that's real, I don't want to disassociate from that or discredit that it may feel that way. We just want to perhaps maybe be able to utilize the mind to shift your energy. So let's just be curious. So let's take, I'm afraid because I don't know what the future holds. Let's go with that one. It's pretty collective right now. So how I see the world. The second one is changes how I feel. So then I write the word feelings. Changes how I feel. Right? So if I see the world is, I'm afraid right now because of the impending uncertainty. Is that the one I chose? I forget. Right. I'm afraid because I don't know what the future holds. Okay, I don't know what the future holds. What the future could hold could be, oh my God, all these things that I don't even know. And if I'm to focus on that and focus on that and focus on that, I'm going to feel like if I tried that right now, let's try that on. Oh, I feel contracted. I feel afraid. I feel choked. I'm already worried about money. I'm already worried about relationship. I'm already worried about being lonely. It just goes, I go to hell instantly. And and then the next one is changes how I act. So it shifts my behavior, how I see the world, changes how I feel, changes how I act. So if I believe, or if I'm focused on that I'm probably going to feel quite lonely, which might make me feel like, well, there might be something wrong with me, or I might act in a way in which a lonely person would act. So maybe I might act in scarcity, or maybe I might project, or maybe I might be needy. Scarcity, maybe I won't be as generous. Maybe I will feel quite down. Maybe I won't be as creative. Maybe I'm going to go into a negative self-talk about myself. I might change my actions. I might actually be quite harsh in my relationships. I might not be as creative in my work. So see, feel, act, which changes my results, right? How I see the world changes how I feel, changes how I act, changes my results. And then we kind of go, all right, so if I'm seeing the world like this, I'm feeling scarce, I'm not being as generous with my time, my energy, my kindness, perhaps in my relationships. And then, well, lo and behold, my partner isn't as nice back. And maybe they leave me, or my friends don't want to talk to me, or, and the result is that, well, I'm feeling a bit like people are moving away from me, or it seems like people aren't being generous. Remembering though that this is because we acted this way, so this is a result that's coming back to us, but this is the result. So then our brain goes, see, I am alone. See, I don't know the future. Nothing is in my control, which confirms how I see the world. So that's number 5. So it confirms, like cements this in. This is how we get more and more depressed, and we spiral down and down and down. And it's also how we can get more and more light. Spiral up and open. So the only thing in this empowerment circle or the magical thinking circle, is changing how we see the world. And I suggest using questions. I have endless amounts of questions, but just one of them is, how else could I see this? Is that really true? What else might this mean? What's an empowered way of looking at this? What's the opposite of that truth? So let's use it. I am afraid because there is impending uncertainty and I don't know the future. Okay. So the thing that we're focusing on is uncertainty, right? Uncertainty means that I am afraid or something might bad happen. All right. So that's how I'm choosing to see the world. Well, what else could that mean? What's the opposite? All right. Uncertainty. What's the opposite of being afraid and uncertainty? Well, it could be grateful, right? How could I be grateful for the uncertainty? Or what else could it mean? Maybe it means opportunity. Maybe it means blossoming, right? What if I chose to see it like that? And if I focus on that, this uncertainty might mean a new beginning. That means life can be different than it's ever been before in an expansive way. What's the opposite? So we just kind of keep asking these questions to open the mind up. It's like we've turned on the light and gone, right, I was focused on this one reality and we've got a torch focused on that reality. Right now, all we've done is turn the light on and go, what other options are there to focus on? We've focused the light. Once we get one that feels like empowering, that, you know what, this might mean maybe I get to actually connect with myself and work through some of the things that I've been focused on or pushing away, or maybe I get to step into my power. Maybe I can stop hiding, whatever, I don't know, whatever is going on for you. And then you turn the light off and you go, all right, I'm going to focus there. And then we focus on that. That's going to change how you feel, which is going to change how you act, which will change your results, which will reconfirm a different, more inspiring reality that's come from a place of openness and curiosity, which means it's probably come from your higher self. That's the practical tool.
Beautiful. I like it. Can I share a quick story?
Yes, please. I love story time.
It reminds me of a beautiful, I can't remember where I heard it or where I read it, but it's like the story of the house of 1,000 mirrors. And there was this little dog who's out wandering through this valley, and all of a sudden he's just happily, jovially plodding along, and then he sees this house and he goes up and he realizes the door's open. So he goes inside the door, and all of a sudden he looks around and there's just all these beautiful dogs smiling back at him and wagging their tails, and they go, this is awesome, and they're going, this is great, and so on. And then the next day there's another dog that got out of his backyard and he's running around, and he's not a very happy dog, this one. And he walked up and he saw the house there and he goes, I'll go and check it out. And he walked in and he's really defensive and starts growling. And all of a sudden there's all these other dogs there staring back, growling at him and going, ah. And it's called the House of 1,000 Mirrors. And that reminded me of exactly what you're saying, that projection perception. And I love that tool, that technique of just, well, how can I see this differently? What's another way to view this? And well, that was really, really powerful and such a beautiful, simple, practical tool.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, it's as old as the hills. It's just, again, it can be hard sometimes. It can feel hard sometimes to question it because we really want to be like, no, but I am alone. And I'm not asking you to disassociate from that feeling of feeling alone or loneliness, like honor that. And then just see if you can gently go, how else could I see this? What else could it mean? Cry if you want to, feel alone, reach out for support. And what else might be true? What's the opposite of that one view? You know? So it's not ignoring the fact that we are quite literally, like physically alone. There is no one else here with me. That's the truth. But what does that mean? That's going to shift everything for you.
So saying it's okay to feel, because obviously we've all got a whole range of emotions and stuff, and we don't want to ignore those, right? Like,
yeah, it's not even okay, it's necessary.
Because it'd be pretty, someone asked me a question recently, said, as a meditation teacher, are you always happy? And the way my mind works, I just pictured a keyboard and someone just hitting the high note the whole time. Just going, dude, no, I'm stable, have stability, but I access all those notes. And occasionally, if I'm watching a sad movie or there's a sad experience, I'll feel that. But rather than just hitting the ding, 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 it would drive everyone nuts. So I want to come back to something which was also in your recent Instagram post, which if you're not following Amber, please do so. A, for the awesome intelligence, but also for some humor. And I love in there that, and again, a lot of the industries that we kind of probably tapped into thinking, I've got to solve these problems. And I've probably spent, I don't know, $50,000 to $100,000 thinking there's something wrong with me. I'm going to go find out the reasons why. That guy's got the answer. That person's got the answer. And that coming back to that fact that I think in your post that we're all just, got to let go of all that. That there's that fundamental search. And that's hard because, as you said, like we often feel that there is something. I'm looking at Amber and she's been through all this. She's amazing. I want that. But that in itself is almost part of the problem as well, because we're projecting. So what's your advice there? How to surrender and just to come back to watering the root of our individual beings so we can fruit. And that's not my one. That's Maharishi saying. Water the root so the tree will bear fruit. How do we do that?
Michael Singer says, I'm pretty sure it's Michael Singer. He says, who is the one believing that I need to change or need to fix myself? Like, who's that? Who's the one with the idea that there's something wrong? So who is the one who has the problem? I think his words are. Who's the one with the problem? And the mind will go, well, I have the problem. Who is the I that has the problem? So first just kind of highlighting that, sitting with it. And then because you said the word surrender, and it's something that is taught a lot, and it's a very cognitive, like a lot of people will cognitively, all right, I'm surrendering. Unless you feel deep joy and peace in the moment, you're not fully surrendered. So that's how to know. Am I surrendered? Well, do you feel relaxed? Do you feel joy? No? Okay, then you're not surrendered.
So using our feelings as an indicator to go, oh, where am I at?
Yeah, where am I at? Because people will often ask, oh, how do I surrender? Well, firstly, stop asking, how do I surrender? And just know that it is the nature of the mind to not surrender. It's to judge, which means, okay, so how do I change the nature of the mind? You can't, and don't try. Just know that the mind will naturally judge and think and do its thing. That's its nature. Good, let it do it. And if you can drop back into, I actually interviewed earlier today and someone asked me all my qualifications. I said, I kind of went from here at my head down. Yeah. So it's like, we're up here. And like, if you can use your breath, relax your belly. Exhale, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, trigger your vagus nerve. Inhale for 4, exhale for 4. Bring your heart back into coherence. Bring your mind to calm. Come back there. Notice if your mind's fighting with the idea, if it wants to go into problem solving or something, that none of that is surrender. So it's almost like you just clear it and come back in, you drop back in. And you might have to do that hundreds of thousands of times a day at first because you're used to being up here. You just let it go. You can think you're letting go, but if you're tense, you haven't surrendered. So what we're learning is to be so deeply present with this moment, to release all expectation or ideas, to release any attempt to try and go into the future to fix a problem or to have an idea about a feeling to gain a sense of control. Because the mind gets busy when we have feelings. It's not, we can create suffering from our pain by thinking about it. So pain and suffering are different. We experience discomfort, the mind kicks in, then we suffer.
Yeah. It's a layer.
What we want to do, exactly. So what we want to do is actually come back in, notice the discomfort, and just bring curiosity to it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to know, is this sadness or good? It doesn't really matter. That's a teaching, and I'm down with that. Right now, I'm just saying, how about we just let all of that go and just notice the energy?
Because then the mind's getting involved too, isn't it? Like, regardless, the minute we start trying to consciously understand this stuff, we're getting wrapped back up in ego. Like, why do I feel this way? And then we create story on it, where it's the iceberg, man. We're sitting up here, but we don't know. So,
yeah. People like, ask yourself, why do you feel that anger? And I'm like, don't ask another question. Just, you're just going to, because your mind will come up, it will come up with a genius reason, and it'll probably be projection.
Yeah.
You'll find a reason. You don't need it.
Yeah.
Just come back, breathe, feel. And when you've really felt it and you've allowed that without any shame or judgment that you're feeling anything, it will naturally, you've just got to get out of the way of emotion. Just get out of its road. It'll come out and move through you. Create from it, live from it. Just do its thing. Just stop trying to play with it. And then feel, breathe, move your body, somatically move your body. So I said, like, here, down, like, move, create, cry, dance, shake, breathe. Like, the masculine part of us wants to empty, and that's okay. The feminine part wants to feel and be love, and that's okay. It's just like when those two integrate, you're actually being with it, you're present with it, and you're allowing it. It's like, be the container and what's within the container all at once without getting up here about it.
Beautiful. That's so cool.
Thank you. That's beautiful advice.
You're welcome. I mean, I'm saying it like I can do it easily, and as you know, I like had a shitstorm on Tuesday that I had to move through, so it's all normal, you know, all of it.
And as I said, it would be really boring if there was only the one note on that keyboard too, right?
So boring.
It'd be so boring. And you look at
everything's an adventure.
Yeah. A lot of the greatest movies have some pretty horrific parts in them, and stories of trouble and tragedy that we have to move through, and that's what defines a great story often, isn't it? It's even so that's epic.
Can I add something there, Rich? I know you're probably, are we cut for time? It's just one tiny thing that just
we've got time for sure. A bit more time.
I don't often encourage asking why, but I was the why kid, right? But why? Why do we do that? The beauty of when you allow, you get out of the way of your emotions and stop trying to fix them and stop trying to change them, or, you know, even like it seems counterintuitive for me to give a technique when I'm just saying, just let it be. I just know that sometimes we can start cognitively and shift that, and it'll shift our energy. And so I see the kind of the contrast of that, and I want to speak to that. And so there's different ways to approach it. And with the one where I'm saying just dance with what you're feeling and allow yourself to feel, that doesn't mean wallowing in it. It doesn't mean being like, I'm sad. You don't want to identify with it. You don't want to swim in it. You don't want to swim in your swamp. It's just like, just try to watch it. And then in that watching, when it moves through you naturally, and it will, don't do it. Don't do any of these practices because you want to get away from what you're feeling, because you're missing the point. Don't meditate to get out of a situation. Don't do this to feel better, because you're just still going from pain to pleasure, pain to pleasure. Practice this with the intention to come back to your most natural part of yourself that's been there from the moment that you were born, that you can feel when you're listening to an awesome song or watching a sunset without thinking about the sunset. It's like that little like thing that lights up that goes, whew. Like, I think joy is our natural state. Right? So things that bring you joy, why? Because that's why we're here. And when we live from that place, we will contribute to the world from that place of joy. Why is that important? Why? My favorite question as a child, because it assists us to evolve as our soul. whatever we're truly desiring, what brings me joy, what brings you joy, and you joy, Carly and Rich. Every single human has a different desire in their heart for what brings them joy, or what they dream and desire. The teaching, one of the teachings that you teach all the time, and that I repeat all the time and tell people about, Rich, is follow the charm. Like, and that's kind of I'm saying this in a different way, like follow the charm, follow your charm, follow your charm, and follow it, because it's drawing you closer to the evolution of your soul. So sometimes that charm is going to lead you to places that feel uncomfortable, and in that discomfort, you dance with that discomfort, get out of the road of that discomfort. And once that moves through you, what happens is a beautiful opening and a shift in perspective, where before something felt very scary and triggering, will not be, because you will see it differently. And you only see it differently because you're no longer clouded from what you were running from before, because it's been able to move, because you got out of its road and you allowed it. And once that's gone and it lifts, then you have a new sight, you have clear sight of the world. And then that can continue to perpetuate, and you just get lighter and lighter and more open and more curious. And then you start to live from this place, and what unfolds from that state of presence is just whatever is meant to unfold. You're not thinking about it. You're still using your cognitive mind when you need to, but it unfolds naturally. So that's why, for all you why people, me.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about that, and again, is I read a quote the other day, and it was again from Maharishi, one of the other teachers posted it, and I'm trying to hash it out, but it was like, joy is like the blossoming flower. It'll attract all the things to it. You know, so we often think, you know, I'll be happy when, but if we come to that state of, as you said, pure happiness and joy, and we're just living on that path and purpose, then the bees will actually come in, and we just attract that stuff, because it's just joy, it's beautiful energy.
Totally.
And it's such a beautiful thing. So I think that was a really beautiful conversation. I don't know if I've got any other questions right now. I'm just kind of sitting in that space of it all, and just feels really, how about you, Carly?
I was just reflecting on some of my shit, and I really appreciate your guidance on all of that, Amber. It's authentic and raw and beautiful and honest and vulnerable, and I felt all the feels listening to you, so thank you.
So welcome. And I just want you to know, if you're feeling really depressed and you think, I can't feel depressed and joy at the same time, that's not right. You're wrong. You can. Like, just expand your awareness outside of, don't focus on the depression for a moment. Allow it to be there, and be like, there's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling depressed. Firstly, know that. Or if you're feeling afraid, if you're feeling uncertain. And then I want you to just go look at something real simple, like sun, or play a song that feels awesome, whether that's Jimi Hendrix or Pink, or I don't know, whatever. If you cringe at both of those, just look at something beautiful, and just focus for a moment on something that you find beautiful. Your version of beautiful. Like, it doesn't have to be mine. I'm saying the things I like. And just give your attention to it without thinking about it for a moment, and just notice something that might wake up within, that might be a slight relief for a moment from the depression. Now, I want you to understand is what's already in you, that you're just waking up through your attention. That's it.
Beautiful. Well, that was a very beautifully poignant way to finish. And I think if I can just add one thing there, it's like, as we probably agree, that and probably from all of us, I've certainly been stuck in those states previously and had my own battles and some quite deep, dark days in the crevasse. And I think what Amber's saying there is come into the moment, because when we're in those states, we're not in the moment. We are caught in mind, and anxiety and depression. There's a great book on it called The Lost Connection. I really encourage you to have a read of that if you are suffering from those states. They're two sides of the same coin, and we're not really operating from the present moment. So just take that tip of what Amber said and come back to what's really happening right now. And you're a being experiencing life, and it's not always in the head. So go and sit in nature and feel the sun and listen to a song. Go and look at Amber's posts and have a laugh and learn at the same time.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Thanks for that story, Rich.
Where can people find more about you and connect?
Sure. Amberhawken.com is the easiest place, right? It's my website. Instagram is probably the most interactive place right now. So
Yeah.
Amber, AMBER _ Hawken, HAWKEN for Instagram, and then just amberhawken.com for my website. It's just, yeah, those places.
It's really beautiful, and blessed to call you a friend and teacher to learn from. And thank you for coming on the Happy Mind Project. That was very, very worthwhile.
Honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
You have a wonderful day.